Welcome to your first homework assignment. This is kind of a two-part assignment. The first one is identifying the hypotheses. And so we need to kind of understand the language and how we're going to write some different things in statistics so we're all uniform and consistent. So when we look at statistics, there are essentially these 5 steps. And hopefully you kind of watched that video already on what is statistics through the Annenberg site. And that kind of gives you an idea about the whole process that we're going to be doing. So there are essentially 5 steps. We're going to work on the first step today. We need to formulate a question or a hypothesis. And so that is what we're going to try to set up today, looking at some different things called the null and the alternative. So you can see the null hypothesis has these symbols. And again, this was already kind of given in the lecture notes. But I'm going to go over on how you're going to do your homework. So a couple things. The null is the hypothesis or the assumption. We assume this to be true. We don't know if it is or not, but it's what we believe unless we are shown differently. The alternative hypothesis then is the claim. So I wouldn't go out and collect data on something unless I had a claim different than the alternative hypotheses. So what we have to do is we have to collect evidence. And the evidence, we're going to ask to see if our evidence supports the null hypothesis. That's what we're asking. If it doesn't support the null hypothesis, then we're going to go with the alternative. But notice everything is based upon the null hypotheses. So not only do you need to know H naught or H sub 0 and H sub 1 is the null and the alternative, another symbol that you're going to encounter when you start to work on your homework problems is this P and this, that's like an MU, which we call mu. Those are for the population. So you are in a statistics course and you will be studying samples. So the hypothesis always refers to the population. So you either be using a capital P or a mu when you write your null and your alternative hypothesis. So just a review before we do an example. The null hypothesis will have this mathematical symbol. You can always use the equal to. Now sometimes people like to do less than and equal to and greater than or equal to. So you have to kind of know your inequalities. And remember, this is what we assume to be true. So if it's assumed true and I think it's different, then that is going to be my alternative. My alternative hypothesis, I might not know how it's different. I might say, well, maybe it's larger or smaller, so that would be not equal to. Maybe it's just greater than, or maybe it's just less than. So these mathematical symbols are going to be pretty important. So now I need to know also what symbol to use. So essentially we're only going to have those 2 symbols for our null and our alternative. And so we're always using the symbols from the population. P for proportion, which is a percent, or mu for my mean, which is a numerical value. So let's go ahead and look at an example on what you're going to be doing on this homework assignment. So I have a few for you to practice on your own. It's a very important step in statistics. So we've got this study about a hospital, and you can go on and read, and it says that they're looking at these surgeries, and they're wondering if the surgery for the knee is going to be better or not. So I'm going to highlight a few things. The surgery would cure more than 6% of all knee injuries. So it's got to be better than what we're doing, or I'm not going to do it. So if you take a look at the null, the knee surgery is as effective. So as effective. So that means that my proportion, why did I use P? Because it's a percentage, is equal to 60%. It's as effective. My alternative says my new surgery better cure more than 60. So that is P is greater than 60%. Now, some people would like to do this. My new surgery is not going to cure, or will cure up to 60%, and I'm not going to make a change unless it cures more than 60%. So my P, my percent, is 60%. That came right out of the problem. So that's how I know when to use P, proportion, for a percent. Okay, let's look at example B. We're talking about gluten-free, and so it says the government comes in and inspects. And essentially, you can be labeled gluten-free if it contains less than 20 parts per million of gluten. So my mu, notice now it's not a percentage, its mu now is 20 parts per million. So my null is I'm going to walk in and I'm going to assume that you are putting 20 parts per million because it's labeled gluten-free. I could also say you're putting more than or equal to 20, but 20 is the cutoff. I always just use an equal sign for my null, and that kind of gets away from having to do this less than or greater than. So because you're labeling it, I'm assuming that you have 20 parts per million. I have to test you because I have to know if you are putting, I could care less if it's more, great, but I'm always testing to see if you might be putting in less than 20 parts per million. So again, the equal sign always goes with the null.